From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. Today we have the latest on Syria as well as more saber rattling from China. We'll get you caught up on all that and more, but first, a look at the latest headlines. South Korean police raid the office of President Yoon Suk-yeol days after he briefly imposed martial law and plunged the country into chaos. The raid was conducted as part of a probe to determine if Yoon's role in the martial law declaration amounts to insurrection. President-elect Donald Trump nominates Andrew Ferguson to lead the Federal Trade Commission. Ferguson will replace Lena Khan, who blocked billions of dollars worth of corporate acquisitions and sued Amazon and Meta for an anti-competitive behavior. Washington offers a $10 million reward for information about a Chinese hacker who stole data of U.S. Treasury officials and hacked thousands of computer firewalls. Beijing says the U.S. is exploiting cybersecurity issues to discredit China. The Mexican government launches an investigation after a bacteria outbreak across 3 states kills at least 17 children. The infants died of an infection that originated from IV nutrition mixtures. And fighters of Boko Haram killed 14 Nigerian fishermen in neighboring Niger. The victims were among thousands of Nigerians who sought refuge across the border to escape deadly armed conflict in their own country. We begin with the latest from the Middle East, where Israel carried out almost 480 airstrikes across Syria over the past 48 hours after rebels dramatically overthrew President Bashar al-Assad's regime. The Israeli military estimates it has destroyed at least 80% of Syria's military capabilities in one of its largest offensive operations in history. Israeli warplanes have hit several targets in at least 8 cities, including weapon stockpiles, air defense systems, missile launchers, fighter jets, and military helicopters. Meanwhile, the Israeli Navy destroyed the Syrian fleet overnight, decimating almost all of the naval vessels. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he has no intention of interfering in Syria's internal affairs, and he only wants to eliminate Iranian military targets in Syria. Notably, the Assad family, which ruled Syria for 50 years, was a strong ally of Iran and made the country a resupply route for Hezbollah in Lebanon. Prime Minister Netanyahu fears that Iran could also try to build relations with rebels who will now govern the neighboring country.
We have no intention of interfering in Syria's internal affairs. However, we do intend to do what is necessary for our security. As such, I approve the Air Force bombing of strategic military capabilities left by the Syrian military so that they will not fall into the hands of the jihadists. We want to have relations with the new regime in Syria, but if this regime allows Iran to reestablish itself in Syria, or allows the transfer of Iranian weapons, or weapons of any kind, to Hezbollah, or attacks us, we will respond forcefully and we will exact a heavy price. What happened to the previous regime will also happen to this one.
Additionally, Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz has confirmed that his troops are now operating in Syria beyond the buffer zone of the Golan Heights. Katz says Israel is trying to build a sterile defense zone to prevent the establishment of terror along the Syrian border.
The IDF is now completing its entrenchment in the buffer zone and in the controlled areas in order to protect the residents of the Golan Heights and the citizens of the State of Israel. Together with the Prime Minister, I instructed the IDF to establish a sterile defense zone against weapons and terror threats in southern Syria in order to prevent the establishment and organization of terror in Syria, and to prevent from creating a reality that will be similar to what existed in Lebanon and Gaza before October 7th. We will not allow this. We will not allow threats against the State of Israel.
However, several Arab nations have accused Israel of taking advantage of the political instability in Syria to capture more territory. Meanwhile, in Damascus, rebels have finally announced an interim government that will run the country until March 1st of 2025. The prime minister will be Mohammed al-Bashir, an engineering graduate turned rebel who says it's time for Syrians to enjoy stability and calm.
Today we held a cabinet meeting that included a team from the Salvation government that was working in Idlib and its vicinity, and the government of the ousted regime. The meeting was under the headline of transferring the files and institutions from the government of the ousted regime to the transitional government in order to receive these files and conduct business. This means that there will be a Syrian government that will handle these files and manage the business during a transitional period, God willing, that may end on March 1st.
Now, only time will tell if the rebels actually bring peace to Syria, which has been ruined by decades of war. And moving to Asia, China has deployed its largest naval fleet in decades just inside its regional waters, prompting Taiwan to declare its highest level of alert. According to Taiwan, Beijing's maritime drills involve around 60 warships and 30 Coast Guard vessels. China has also heightened its aircraft activity around the self-governed island, with 100 sorties detected in the last 2 days.
This number of China Navy and Coast Guard ships in the region was indeed very alarming. And how they are scattered is beyond the eastern border of Taiwan between the first and second island chain. I think their intention is very clear.
China so far has yet to comment on the military drills. In fact, the only thing Beijing has mentioned is that it's taking necessary measures to protect its sovereignty and territorial integrity.
We are highly vigilant against the actions of the separatist forces for Taiwan independence and their collusion with external forces in seeking independence and provocations, and we will never let it go unchecked. We take the necessary measures to resolutely defend country's sovereignty and territorial integrity, safeguard peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait, and safeguard the fundamental interests of compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait.
Beijing's latest war games were expected by Taiwan, whose President Lai Ching-te made visits to Hawaii and Guam earlier this month. Chinese authorities firmly opposed President Lai's visit to the United States and vowed stronger countermeasures against the island. Meanwhile, Taipei says overseas trips are customary for the Taiwanese leader, and they should not be an excuse for Chinese provocations.
Many world leaders condemn China for violating international terms, threatening regional peace and stability, and call on China to play its part as a member of the region and stop all provocative acts immediately. It is customary for the president to make overseas trips. Taiwan's normal exchanges should not be an excuse for Chinese provocations. Our military is closely monitoring the situation and will be able to react accordingly to ensure peace.
Meanwhile, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said Washington is committed to helping Taiwan against China's intent of capturing the territory.
Well, we've said all along that in accordance with the Taiwan Relations Act, and our commitment is that we will continue to help Taiwan attain the ability or the capability that it needs to be able to defend itself, and that's been our work throughout. We don't want to see any kind of unilateral change to the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. We've been very clear about that as well.
Taiwan lives under the constant threat of an invasion by China, which has held at least 4 major maritime drills in the last 2 years to press claims over the self-governed island. China also opposes the international recognition of Taiwan as a country and bristles at any contact between Taiwan and the United States. With its latest drills, China is telegraphing how it can, in fact, choke off Taiwan and prevent naval access from outside forces seeking to save the island. Russia is rewriting the rules of exile. From powerful autocrats to whistleblowers on the run, Vladimir Putin's nation has become the ultimate safe haven for the displaced and disgraced. Syria's former leader Bashar al-Assad's dramatic escape to Moscow adds another name to a growing list of controversial figures finding sanctuary under Putin's watchful eye. But why does the Kremlin welcome them? In our next report, we uncover Russia's growing role as a sanctuary for the people like Assad, Edward Snowden, and Ukraine's former president.
Moscow has increasingly become a refuge for ousted world leaders, whistleblowers, and exiles. From Middle Eastern autocrats to European strongmen, many find shelter under Russia's protective umbrella. Let's explore some notable figures who have sought refuge there. After years of clinging to power during Syria's devastating civil war, former President Bashar al-Assad fled to Russia. A coalition of rebel forces launched a lightning offensive forcing Assad and his family to leave. Reports from Russian news agencies confirmed their arrival in Moscow last Sunday. The Kremlin, however, remains tight-lipped about their exact location or future plans.
Their fears are unnecessary. The country will be rebuilt. The fear was from the presence of the regime. The regime is now gone, thanks to God, and the country's moving towards development and reconstruction. It's going towards stability. People are exhausted from war, so the country isn't ready for another, and it's not going to get into another one.
Former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych fled to Russia in 2014, following the Maidan Revolution, which saw over 100 protesters killed.
The biggest shock for me was all that portraits of Viktor Yanukovych, because I knew that here should be a lot of very expensive pictures or some, I don't know, clocks, etc. But I didn't expect to see so many portraits of Viktor Yanukovych, of a president of such a poor country, but who has got so much very expensive portraits, even of himself.
The pro-Russian leader claimed he was the victim of a coup. But soon after his escape, Russia annexed Crimea and backed separatists in eastern Ukraine, deepening tensions with Kiev. Yanukovych has lived in exile ever since. His son, Alexander, recently acquired Russian citizenship, while his younger son, Viktor Jr., tragically drowned in Lake Baikal in 2015. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Zelensky stripped Yanukovych of his citizenship in 2023, symbolically severing his ties to his homeland. Edward Snowden became a household name in 2013 when he leaked classified National Security Agency documents exposing global U.S. surveillance programs. Unable to secure asylum elsewhere, Snowden found refuge in Russia, where he remains to this day. In 2022, he was granted Russian citizenship, citing it as a step toward stability for his wife and 2 sons.
I myself have lived in exile for more than a year and a half now. And these are things that are unlikely to change soon. But they're worth it. All the prices we've paid, all the sacrifices we've made, I believe we would do again. I know I would do it again. Because it was never about me.
Askar Akayev, Kyrgyzstan's first post-Soviet president, was ousted during the Tulip Revolution in 2005. A trained scientist, Akayev found refuge in Russia, where he began teaching at Moscow State University. Unlike many exiles, he avoided prosecution and maintained a connection with his homeland. In 2021, Akayev returned to Kyrgyzstan for a brief visit, signaling a partial rehabilitation. Now 78, he continues his academic work in Moscow but has expressed a desire to return to Kyrgyzstan permanently. Slobodan Milosevic, Serbia's notorious former leader, died in 2006 while on trial for war crimes in The Hague.
Well, the public prosecutor has concluded that Mr. Milosevic died a natural cause and that there are no indications of that the death resulted from crime.
His wife Mirjana Markovic and son Marko sought refuge in Russia after his fall. Markovic, often accused of being the mastermind behind her husband's authoritarian rule, lived in exile until her death in 2019. Russia's growing role as a refuge for ousted leaders and whistleblowers raises eyebrows. Whether motivated by political leverage, ideological alignment, or strategic interests, Moscow's open-door policy reshapes the global exile map.
In a significant step toward fostering a robust cryptocurrency ecosystem in Latin America, El Salvador and Argentina have signed a landmark agreement to collaborate on crypto regulation and innovation. The pact, signed by El Salvador's National Commission on Digital Assets and Argentina's National Securities Commission, underscores the region's commitment to embracing digital assets as a cornerstone of economic growth.
To share our expertise with international partners, enabling them to harness the benefits of a well-regulated industry, and to broaden the international footprint of our regulated companies by forging strategic partnership agreements with nations worldwide. This landmark agreement with Argentina holds particular significance, given the country's standout reputation for pioneering innovative technologies and its remarkable rate of adoption.
Now, this collaboration between the two Latin American nations follows President Nayib Bukele's recent visit to Argentina, where he shared insights on cryptocurrency and debt management with Argentinian leaders.
Trade, nuclear energy, security. There are many topics that we are going to discuss with the President Javier Milei.
Now, it's also worth noting that not just El Salvador and Argentina, but even Uruguay has taken a major step by establishing a clear regulatory framework for digital assets.
Latin America has a great opportunity to be the crypto leader in the world, because in countries with high adoption like Argentina, consumption and the crypto economy allow the ecosystem to develop, unlike in the United States where people rely on banks and the government and do not take advantage of the benefits of using Bitcoin.
And adding a global dimension to these developments, Argentina's President Javier Milei has also found an ally in President-elect Donald Trump. The two leaders discussed potential trade agreements and mutual economic goals at a recent meeting in Florida. Donald Trump, known for his disruptive policies, praised Milei's economic strategies and declared him a MAGA person.
Today the world is at the hands of Donald Trump, Bukele, and us here in Argentina. Let's say, the world is breathing new winds of freedom. Therefore, we are facing a historic opportunity to begin to change the world.
With the incoming Trump administration hinting at its openness to cryptocurrency, the alignment could pave the way for strengthened U.S.-Latin America trade partnerships. And the collaboration between El Salvador and Argentina marks a turning point as the continent is now poised to become a hub for digital innovation, signaling a bold new era for cryptocurrency. And finally, from Europe, Italy is facing a growing exodus of young people seeking better opportunities abroad. Over the past decade, more than 1 million Italians, particularly those aged 25 to 34, have left the pristine paradise. The brain drain is driven by low salaries, lack of job recognition, and high youth unemployment. As young Italians leave, the country is staring at a population crisis where the number of elderly could soon outmatch the young. Does Italy have a plan to stop the Great Escape? Our final report explores this very question.
Italy, the land of jaw-droppingly gorgeous landscapes, irresistible pizza, and that I'm just going to casually sip this espresso in a sunlit piazza lifestyle that makes you want to drop everything and live there. While the streets of Rome and Milan may seem like living postcards for those on vacation, for the youth, it's a different picture. More than 1 million Italians have packed their bags and left the country in the last decade, with a whopping 1/3 of them aged between 25 and 34. This mass exodus raises a simple question. Why are young Italians fleeing a country that seems to have everything? Italian youngsters know the harsh reality is that even a modest, quiet life can be a luxury in a country where 15 euros for shopping might be a stretch. And in Italy, that's increasingly becoming a distant dream. So what does a person do? If you can't afford the quiet, you leave. It's not just about the past and history anymore. The youth are leaving because, despite their degrees and potential, Italy simply can't offer them the opportunities they deserve. Real wages in Italy have been steadily declining, with youth unemployment rates higher than the European average. Workplaces in Italy are seen as unmeritocratic, where your educational achievements don't guarantee a higher salary or a better position. There's no national minimum wage, and salaries don't exactly grow with the number of degrees you rack up. It's the kind of environment where young, bright minds are left asking, why even bother? Youngsters, after studying abroad, return to Italy, hoping to find a rewarding job that would allow them to contribute to the country's future. Instead, they're finding that salaries are lower in Italy than in other parts of Europe, and sometimes by hundreds of euros for the same job. It's a shame because the exodus is not just a cultural loss, it's an economic one too. Italy has lost an estimated 134 billion euros, which is almost $140 billion, from the years 2011 to 2023 due to brain drain. The most worrying part, this isn't just a temporary phase. With Italy's aging population and a dwindling number of younger workers, things are only going to get worse. By 2050, the ratio of people working to those not working will shrink from 3:2 to a precarious 1:1. The country will have fewer people paying into the system and more people needing services. This sounds like a recipe for disaster. Italy is trying to reverse this trend. They're offering tax incentives to attract highly skilled workers to come back home, and even bigger cuts if those workers bring their children along. But even with these incentives, it might be too little too late. After all, when the country's brightest minds are leaving in droves, it's hard to imagine those incentives would be enough to stop the exodus. So, while Italy remains a paradise for tourists and retirees, it's turning into a bit of a dystopia for its youth. The dream of Italy is being slowly suffocated by low wages, a lack of recognition, and a country that just can't seem to value the future enough to keep its brightest young people from packing up and leaving. Let's just hope the next generation of Italians doesn't have to leave to find their quiet life somewhere else.
That's all we have time for today. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.
Hello and welcome to Fast and Factual. My name is Utsav Parekh and here are the top stories of the day. We begin with Syria.